Howdy, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand. You might be thinking you're seeing double. No, we've actually got a guest here, Erik Cabral. I know we're both handsome, but he does have a little bit more hair than me. Erik is the author of an upcoming book, and you know I like speaking to smart people. His new book is going to be called Be Your Brand. He's also a podcaster. I was just asking him about how many podcasts and interviews, and he's nearing on 1,000 interviews, plus minus, probably more in some cases if you look at other interviews that he's done. So this guy has been there and done that. He's the host of the Entrepreneur Circle, and his goal is to help mission-driven entrepreneurs gain clarity in their messaging and attract their ideal clients. So another interesting thing here is that he's recently worked with powerhouse brands such as Shark Tank's Matt Higgins, VaynerMedia, David Meltzer, The Miracle Mornings, Hal Elrond, iHeartRadio, Facebook's Randy Zuckerberg, and a whole host of other interesting folks. So I think at heart, Erik is a storyteller, and we're going to hear a little bit about personal branding, some of the challenges of perhaps dealing with guests, bringing out their stories, and just how to make it as a podcaster in this current environment. So that's super cool. And the last thing I'm going to say here, his goal is to help mission-driven messengers build their personal brand or podcast to make the world better, one mic at a time. And I loved that, so I wanted to end off with that. So Erik, welcome.
Thank you so much, Nicholas, and thank you for that intro. I appreciate you and being here.
So we were chatting a little bit earlier about personal branding and possibly some cultural differences between the different territories that we're in. So I take it you're in the States, and as you know, I'm in Norway. And you brought up the interesting term of janteloven, which is that tall poppy syndrome that Japan and other very sort of structured companies have. So countries have. So maybe talk to me, let's carry on that conversation in terms of personal branding and perhaps the cultural difference in building your brand across countries.
Yeah, I want to tell a story, actually, and I'll bring it from beginning to end in as short amount of time as possible so I can, keep everyone while they're attentive and don't fall asleep on me. But when I first started in 2017, I remember meeting a guy, and his name unfortunately escapes me. But he wanted to start a YouTube channel. He wanted to revolve it around his passion for travel and creating experiences for himself and potentially others with like Airstreams, with the travel. What do you call them? The caravans, trucks.
Caravans,
kind of
those beautiful silver things.
Yeah, they're beautiful. And he wanted to do that. And one of the early things that he started to do was create content for a YouTube channel. And he interviewed me on his show. And he started to explain to me the concept of how janteloven, am I pronouncing it correctly, Nicholas?
Yeah, look, I'm foreign as well, so I'm probably butchering it as well. So we're in the same boat.
It sounds right. It sounds right. But people know what we're talking about. And he said, and I was talking about personal branding in 2017. And he explained to me how that goes against the norm and the culture where he's from in Norway. And I couldn't understand the concept, and I started to look into it, and I watched a documentary specifically about this that highlighted certain artists that came from the region, ABBA being one of them, if you're a child from the 70s, 80s. Some others escape me. I think it's, what's her name? Anyway, there's a lot of famous people that came from there that have to struggle, especially if they come to the States. And what I've recognized in that documentary was so many hit songs were written from someone in that area, from that country, because they can't do it themselves. They have to give it to a Sia or a Rhea. No, just keep rhyming. Whatever artist, Beyonce, they write the songs. They're so talented, but they can't rise above, from my understanding. So fast forward recently, if anyone's ever heard of the Viking, I forget what does he call himself? On YouTube, over 1 billion views. He jumps off of mountains, cliffs, into the ice. But first he throws an axe. or a rock to break the ice so that he can land and not kill himself. So he came to us and he asked, I have over 1 billion views. What do I do? I'm not making money off of this. I said, well, number one, move to the States. He's like, I can't make money because of where I live. I'm not allowed to do that. I have over 1 billion views. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, first off, you have to have a product. You have to have a service. You have to have something. And it made sense for him. He was getting so much attention, to bring them through that experience that he's having, not necessarily by jumping, but maybe the trek to get there, or maybe create a mastermind, a retreat, an experience for others to kind of live your lifestyle and then be there to witness the event as it occurs. That could be cool. And maybe some lifestyle, health, education along the way. So this is sort of the thing that I think if you are from that area, first, probably the easiest solution is to move. Second is if you're going to get a lot of views, if you're going to have a personal brand, it has to lead them to something. What is your product? What is your service? How do you help people? Is really where I live. Like, how do we distill that?
So that point about having a product, how do you monetize all these views and clicks is obviously the key something that a lot of people are trying to figure out. So, and that's it's great that you offer folks that kind of guidance. And in terms of that Viking chap, I have seen his videos. In Northern Europe where we are, the populations are tiny. So I'm in Norway, there's 5.5 million people. So, I mean, we just don't have the numbers. So to your point, okay, if you're getting the numbers, go and move to the States.
Or somewhere in Europe that's close by.
Yeah.
that doesn't have those rules.
Yeah. So in terms of Jenteloven, and obviously I don't think America has that dish. I think everyone is quite, I think you're trained from an early age to be quite, what's the word? You've got to put yourself out there. I'm walking here, there's always those kind of, in Norway, we don't look at each other on the bus. We don't talk to each other on the bus. We don't wave to each other unless we're doing cross country or at the or at the sauna, things like that. So it's quite different to the States. But your process in terms of extracting out of somebody what their value is, it must be quite interesting. And maybe talk to us through another example like the Viking, where somebody's come to you and said, I don't know what's special about me. Should I be a brand? Should it be me, as in my name, Nicholas Kuhner, or do I go out using a brand, create a name and a logo and then hide behind that?
There was a day, Nicholas, that personal brand was very few and far in between. They were famous people. They had a platform like a television show, talk show. They had a vault of content from speaking on stages and put them on cassettes, put them on CDs, and then they sold those at the back of the room. They sold a product like a program for you to better yourself or to build a business or to invest in real estate, whatever it was. They didn't have the internet, so they were able to build and sell information. But what other companies and corporations were doing, where they were selling products or services and building a brand that way, they could hide behind the CEO could be a jerk. It didn't matter who they were as a person, because there wasn't a limelight, a spotlight like the internet to share their thoughts and their ideas, and for them to expose themselves at that level. So as time evolved and the internet became what it is today, we started to realize as normal people that we have access. Oh, wow, I can create my own talk show like Oprah Winfrey. Oh, I could speak on stages and record it and share the information. But the thing is, what happened over time is those folks had to figure out, the Tony Robbins of the world, I can't sell information anymore because it's everywhere. It's free. What I need to do is sell transformation. What I need to do is sell the implementation of my ideas. So that's where we are living now. We are trying to figure out now with AI, it's evolving into another state. So I could talk about that sort of phase as it's happening in real time. But for now, we've that ship has sailed. Hiding behind a corporate brand, hiding behind a logo. Everyone wants to work with a person. People want to work with people, not a business or a faceless logo. They want to work with Elon Musk. They want, if I buy a Tesla, I align with some of his values. If I want to buy Apple products, I loved Steve Jobs. I have since lost love because I don't like Tim Cook. I don't like what he's doing. That guy is not innovating like Steve Jobs was. So there are great examples of the people that led the charge to personal brands, and how you can create a community, a tribe of people that love you, and then they'll do anything that anything you're a part of. They want to be a part of it.
Yeah, the power in that is quite staggering. We can use the example of Tucker Carlson, I guess. I mean, he was a stalwart of Fox, and now he's gone over to YouTube and to X with his own show, and is getting as many or more views than Fox is getting on all of their channels. And I've seen this over and over again when we look at, for example, a lot of news programs that I watch, and the South African elections have just happened, and I went onto YouTube to look at contrasting views, and I saw the state television, and then I saw somebody like us, somebody who started a podcast channel or a channel with double the amount of views, in the hundreds of thousands of views. And this is somebody who's not a accredited journalist, but he's got a nice setup, and dresses nicely, gets the guests on. Traditional media is completely screwed. I don't know how you can compete with YouTube and TikTok when you can literally just move over from the mainstream onto your own channel and bring over your viewers. It's quite staggering.
Yeah, it's funny how people are building a brand off of just their point of view, like you said. I think that it only works if your point of view is unique, and in order for it to be unique, you have to sort of create a bubble for yourself where you're not influenced by so many different things, and then you just regurgitate what you hear. For example, I'm thinking about there's a couple of guys who exploded recently in the Hollywood entertainment space, and all they do is talk about woke culture, and they talk about how Disney is becoming wokeified and incorporating ideologies that are against what Walt Disney would have garnered and created Disney for, family, basically. So all they do is criticize all the movies and TV shows that Disney creates, and they're bigger than Disney in views. Like in the people don't go to watch the movies anymore. They would rather watch The Critical Drinker or a Nerdrotic and these brands that have exploded. So it's pretty wild, the world that we live in now. And my point is, they have perspectives that were against the norm. Their perspective, and the thing is, it wasn't just throwing rocks. It was poignant, and it was clear, and it makes sense what they say, right? It was valid. And they're not dummies. Like they're very intelligent, and they're storytellers themselves. So they were able to break things down and just basically shine a light on lazy storytelling. I still appreciate Disney. I don't like the direction they moved in, but when I watch these guys, the way they describe and break down and crystallize storytelling, and then say, hey, here's great storytelling versus bad storytelling. And then it makes you, for lack of a better word, angry that, like, yeah, they're doing a terrible job over there. All they need to do is tell stories, and they're not doing a good job of that. So anyway, my point is, find a unique place and share your thoughts in a unique way that's specific to you, and hopefully it'll grow over time.
And I think to tie into your point there, you don't need to be loved by everyone. You need to really pick your target market. You almost need to have haters so that you can get
Haters are good.
engagement. Yeah,
Yeah. Haters
they
mean
probably
that,
drive as much traffic as the people who like you.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's a guy here in the States. His name's Howard Stern. He has since, faded. But he built a whole brand on that in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s. People would listen to him because he was so controversial. Because the ones that they made a movie about him, and they said that hey, here's your numbers on your listeners. Say it's 5 million, and then here's the people that love you, and then here's the numbers of the people that hate you. It's 10 million, and we're like, what? Why are there more people that hate me? It's because their number one answer was, I'm here to. I'm here because I want to hear what he says next. I want to know what he's going to say next. So yeah, haters are good. It means that you've reached enough people. You've reached past this threshold where everyone's being nice and everybody loves you, your friends, your family, your network, and you've gone beyond that. So it's a good sign if you have haters.
Well, going back to the whole personal branding side, it's by having people who really love you or really hate you means that you've taken a stand. So you stand for something, and you've just got to stick by that, because if you're going to be trying to be everyone's friend, you're going to be like Hillary Clinton and lose the presidency.
Yeah, they say that. No, sorry. Go ahead, Nicholas.
Yeah, and one of my favorite sayings is the only thing worse than being spoken about is not being spoken about. I think that was your American comedy chap, Mark Twain.
Yeah. The other quote that you reminded me of is if you're for everyone, you're for no one.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, be very specific to who you want to speak to and develop a tribe over time. And the thing is, those examples that I gave you, they've been producing content and doing YouTube content for a dozen years. So that didn't happen for them overnight. And a lot of people only recognize it as overnight, but don't realize they've been putting the work in.
Yeah, I'm sure people are going to groan when they hear this, because I say this for quite often when I talk to entrepreneurs. But people are generally an overnight success after 10 years, and it's not what people want to hear. They want to have a quick fix, and all of these YouTube videos and courses that make a fortune. Listen to visionaries and read these books. It's going to make you a overnight success. They're absolute charlatans and liars. The people who are telling the truth are the ones who say this is the long haul. Everyone from Elon Musk, I mean, he's had ups and downs and ups. And now, yes, he's got billions and billions, but the roller coaster that dude went through, people had written them off a whole bunch of times. So it's just about sticking power, and you can use that same analogy when it comes to Bitcoin or all of these things. The guys who started out made a quick 50% on their Bitcoin in the early, in 2016. They would have had millions in the bank now if they'd kept that just held steady. So it's really about being consistent, and a businessman I really admire is the guy who started Podmatch, which is the channel where we met, Alex Sanfilippo, and he just put out a report on independent podcasters, and in the report it said the likelihood of a podcast succeeding is after a couple of years is like 2% or up to 3%. So the majority of folks who go into podcasts just it ends after 6 months, a year, etc. But once you've got over the 2-year mark and you've done over 100 episodes, that percentage, it's still really low, but once you're in there, your chances of success are slightly better. But even those who've started a podcast, out of the 100%, only 3% at the end actually make something significant. So hard work, sticking at it is no guarantee for success either. So I think people need to be aware of that as well.
Yeah, in success, it's all relative. Everyone has their own definition, right? But I think in this case, what you're referencing is just publishing. Right? Like people stop after 20 episodes. We call it pod fading, and because it's hard work, like you said. And one of the main things that I've recognized that people, one of the reasons why is, well, number one, they lack clarity and purpose behind what they're doing and why they're doing it. And then also, they never develop systems and processes. They never hand it off. They continue to edit it themselves for years, and then they grow tired of it, and it becomes work, and you're not getting paid for it. And it was started out as a passion project, and you're like, I got other stuff to do. I got to go make money, because podcasting, truly, you're not going to make money. I mean, those days have sailed. In terms of the podcast itself becoming the business. Now, if you can do it in a way where it aligns with a business and it's a marketing tool for you, and then you can see clients and build relationships and trust over time with the podcast, that makes sense. So you can indirectly make money from your podcast if it's serving your business that you've already developed. So now you have to do two things. You have to develop your business and your product and service and make sure that it's delivering on the results you promise. But then also you have to develop this podcast brand, which is your personal brand, basically. It's hard. It's definitely hard work, Nicholas.
Are you saying that the $1 million I paid you for this episode is not means is
It's a write-off, Nicholas.
It's a write-off, yeah. I think that's the thing people need to realize as well, is that this is not a big money game. And that comes into the second point, which is the importance of building that community that you mentioned, or that tribe. And that, again, there's no easy money. It's all hard work. It's email lists. It's putting out content. It's finessing your target market and group and creating opportunities. And that's the exciting part of it in terms of starting a business and figuring out your brand is, okay, who's my target market? Let me throw something against the wall and see what sticks. So not everyone gets it right out of the bat, right? Right out of the gate, not out of the gate.
Exactly. I think the people, from my understanding, Nicholas, that are listening to this, and thank you for listening and making it this far, I want to put out a phrase that always sticks with me, and I think is helpful for anyone who's first starting, is you're in the best position to serve the person you once were. So if you're looking for content, you're looking to create something, you want to serve an audience and build an audience, well, you have to talk about what you're doing and all the problems that you solved for yourself. So say it's weight loss, say you were 400 pounds, here in the States. I don't know what that is, but I'm terrible at math. But you lost the weight, right? You're in great shape. Now, what did you do? What were the habits you created? What were the systems that you put in place? What did you do? Did you surround yourself with people who were start talking about all the things you did to get to where you are? And then now you'll be speaking to who you once were. The people will start to identify with all the things that you're talking about, all the pain and suffering that you experienced in the past. For me, it was I left corporate America. And that is a grind in and of itself, and it's a scarcity mindset. And I would talk about all the negative things and highlight what I didn't like about it. 21 years in that environment. And then when I left and started a business. So that was my first audience. I would just talk about, hey, I'm working on this mindset stuff. I'm incorporating the Miracle Morning from Hal Elrod. I'm exercising. I'm doing intermittent fasting. Those were early things. So speaking to the old version of me that needed to hear this advice, that's where I think is the best place for people to start, because you're passionate about it. It makes it easier.
You've got some context and specialization in that. you know yourself and your own story.
100%. Yeah.
And in terms of that, this is something I again want to encourage listeners to think about is every single one of us has something interesting in our backstory that somebody would find interesting. No matter what it is, it could be the time you broke your leg, it could be how you grew up. Everyone, there is an interesting story if you craft it correctly in your own background. So I think one of the jobs is to journal or write things down and think about your childhood, where you grew up, where you were when something happened. There are lots of things that are actually interesting about you that probably other people can bring out of you easier than you can. So that's where folks like Erik come in. Now, Erik, maybe let's just talk a little bit about your podcast and the folks that you talk to and your focus. I mean, you've been doing this since 2017. Maybe talk to us through some of the again, firstly, just a bit about the podcast, and then maybe some of the challenges of just kickstarting that thing and getting it to the point where you've done hundreds and hundreds of interviews.
Yeah, it was not a perfect design, I'll tell you that, Nicholas, and it's still evolving. Um, the early days, I'd say the first dozen to 2 dozen episodes were me recording conversations that I was typically having at a networking event, having just being inspired by people, and uh, it was all new to me to find people that had this wealth of knowledge and experience. And I was like, wow, I need to capture this, mainly selfishly for myself, because I want to be able to recall and potentially document it. We didn't have AI at the time, but I was thinking of it that way. And then also I was doing Facebook Live was big in like 2018, 2019. So I was doing a lot of live interviews, and people would label me as a podcaster, even though that's not what it was. So eventually I adopted it, and I thought, let me just combine this, record it, and publish it. That's simply how it started. And then what I recognized was I was giving the people in my network a platform to share their story, which gave them fulfillment, made them feel joy and great about what they were doing. But then also it was a platform to advertise what they were doing. So they were grateful for many different reasons. At some point, some of those guests would listen to their episode. They wouldn't listen to the other ones. They'll go, "Hey, man, I sounded great. Who published? Who edited the show? The music's great. The everything." I was like, "Oh, I do it." Eventually, they started to ask, to the degree where it was 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, can you help me produce a podcast? Where I started to just give it to an editor, my editor, who took over. And it started the company that way, because the company, On Air Brands, was a traditional creative agency that did logos, marketing, branding, social media, things like that. But we didn't produce podcasts. And I think around 2020 to 2021, we committed fully to just being a podcast launch, production, YouTube agency. So that's how we make money. How I make money through the podcast is we produce for people, and including my own shows. But now it's gotten to the degree, Nicholas, where it's challenging, because I want the higher level conversations, the bigger thought leaders, but they kind of regurgitate. They say the same things over and over and over on all different shows. So I'm not bringing anything unique. So I don't want to do that. But if I do occasionally have those guests, it's like I had David Meltzer on my show recently. I want to do something unique, and it requires a lot of research, so that you ask them questions they've never been asked. And the holy grail for any podcaster is to hear, wow, no one's ever asked me that before. And I was like, yeah, inside me is that, touchdown. But that's currently where I am now with the show. It's less of a vehicle for me to promote myself. It's more just a continuous thing. It's part of my life. It's integrated into the business, my personal brand. But I don't say it's a requirement. You don't have to have the big names. If you can serve someone by giving them your platform and helping them promote themselves, because you're aligned with them and they inspire you, I think, yeah, do it. Start interviewing whoever's in your network.
Well, it's interesting talking about that move from sort of traditional agency into the podcasting space. And I have a big branding agency, and our business has changed so much in the last couple of years. I mean, we started before the TikToks and the Instagrams and things like that. So we've gone through all of these different iterations, and now we've got ChatGPT, we've got all these AI programs, and clients are complaining when they're seeing material that perhaps is made on using AI platforms, and we're going much more video focused. And so our business is consistently changing, and I lecture in Norway, and 3 of the exams that I moderated were new podcasts, and they're really starting to think. They're starting to get they know how the production tools work. They know how social media works. These are quite young guys in their early 20s, and I think that the podcast space is going to just continue to grow. Just with similar to other businesses, there's going to be a huge influx, and then 99% of them are going to wither away. But the industry is changing so quickly, and I think the transition into creating and managing content is going to stay, and we can see the quality of the content of producers that used to produce trash content in the past, good content but trash visuals, slowly improving the quality. So that's good to see. In terms of your book, do you want to let's do a little plug on your book in terms of what that entails and what sort of drove you to drive the book? Is the book your written podcast, basically?
I wish I could say, yeah, that would be very easy, given all the tools we have today. It's at this point, Nicholas, been a labor of love because I initiated the book writing process in 2021. And it was a good friend of mine who wrote his book and saw a lot of fruit from it. And then asked me, when are you going to write your book? And I was like, oh, whoa, this is an author asking me when I'm going to author a book. So that gave me permission to do it. So I started the process, and then I signed up, spent thousands of dollars to go through a process, which I'm at fault here that it didn't work, not necessarily theirs. But I'm not one for courses. I don't like to get hours and access to hours upon hours of courses and just live in a silo and work on my own. I need to work with people like this and speak in person. And they had that aspect of it, but it wasn't enough. But the book was written. I never published it. It's my stories with lessons learned throughout. But so much has changed because AI came about, and it put pause on the process for me. And then also I started to build my business, so I put it to the side. But the podcast for sure is there. Same thing, Be Your Brand, YouTube channel, all that stuff. It's just pushing the pieces around in order, like which the book was to be first, the podcast was to be second. Now it's the podcast is first, the YouTube channel is first, things like that. But it's an ecosystem, so to speak, of how we help and how we serve our clients to be really clear on their message, who they are as a person, and then put it out there. And the word authentic is just so overly used, but it is accurate in that when you put content out there, you want it to be a version that is as true as possible to who you really are. Because the last thing I want my clients to experience is someone comes up to you and they realize, they say this behind your back, Nicholas or Erik's not who they put themselves out there to be. Like that's the fakeness. That's the broken trust. As soon as you start to put out things just because you think that's what people want to hear, and you didn't put the work in to figure out who you are first before you can start to create content. So that's what we do, is personal branding through your own story, basically highlighting your experiences and the lessons learned from those experiences.
One of the things I've learned throughout my relatively long career is that most people are terribly boring and actually don't have anything to say or don't want to say it. They're too scared. And that must be a bit frustrating for you sometimes as well. I know I've had it in my branding business where we said to the client, look, everyone is blue in the finance industry. You cannot go blue. Or you can, but then your story's got to be different, or you've got to, bring in a pink elephant or some different aspect. And they just don't do it, and eventually they sort of just fizzle out, or they don't do the big change that they were expecting. In terms of the personal branding that you've done with clients or business, has there been anyone who's actually listened to your wacky idea or your out there idea to say, look, this is going to be different, this will make you stand out, and they actually did it?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the one word that encapsulates the ones that have success are the ones that embrace vulnerability. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on a public stage, but their work with us and the work with me, they get to the degree where they get increasingly more comfortable with speaking about hard things, speaking about their truths. It's very therapeutic, to go through the process of stripping all the layers down so that they can begin to share comfortably. And then once they go through the process, then they can begin guesting like this on other shows and sharing their stories and beginning to develop those stories over time so that you get to its pure essence, which is the lesson. That's the hard part, is like, how do I extract what the gold that came out of that experience? Because that experience was a span of a decade. And then now I come here, please don't make those mistakes that I made, because this is the reason why. Here's what happened, and here's what I learned from that. That is really difficult, and I think a lot of people don't know how to do that on their own. So, we're here to help with that. And then we're also here to capture that content and put it out there. Like, oh, wait a minute, that happened to you? That's a terrible thing. Let's publish it. but with healing, with love,
Well, if you look at news, people love disasters. They don't love happy stories. So, I grew up in a nice environment. I grew up in a nice house. My parents didn't beat me that often. Nobody's interested. They want to know the one time where your dad hung you over the side of the building like Michael Jackson. So things that are, elements like that. And I think people are a bit, like you said, the point you pulled out was vulnerability. And I think, and I've had a discussion with one of my good friends lately as well, is he doesn't want to talk about something in his personal life that happened. And I'm thinking that is the perfect thing to put out into the market or out in your communications, because it makes you more real. If you pretend that everything's okay and everyone knows things are not okay, like you said, people know this guy's not being authentic. Be authentic. People are going to hate you anyway, and other people are going to admire you and love you more. And I think that's a good point to end off here. So I want to get into where can we send folks to find out more about Erik Cabral and your business, and to help them build their brand?
Yeah, for sure. So I do want to give something to your audience. And I think that as we develop our personal branding service, there should be a giveaway for that as well. And I do have tools that I'd love to offer, but they're not out there yet. Well, we do have a guide to best practices when it comes to being a podcast host, or the best tools and ideas to be a great guest on the show. And you can get that at ericcabral.co/guide. And there you'll get a free downloadable PDF. And if you're inspired, you'll see below that is a Calendly link to schedule time with me. If you want to get some advice, you want to pick my brain, that's all there. Same.
Awesome. So I'll stick those details in the description so folks can click on that. And thank you for your kind offer there. So Erik, it's been great chatting. I'm sure we could bang on for quite a while, and maybe next time we'll narrow it down into one specific area. So what tools to use to build your profile on YouTube and on podcast channels. So Erik's been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thank you, Nicholas.